I just want to go home to a place that never accepted me. There were so many discrepancies before I left. I'm young and black, and now I'm home a vet. You see, I found no matter how far that I went in life, labels never left me alone. What a shame. Who do I hold to blame for the many rejections received in life, despite all my efforts to do what's right? I can only be seen for my original sin, the black skin that I'm in, the label of veteran. I must be crazy, broken, sex crazed, and shucking and jiving, foxhole diving. Guess who I be? Watermelon rinds, fried chicken while lost behind enemy lines. I am defined by the labels of people who never knew me, will never know me, lost in a world of people who think that they outgrow me because I refuse to subscribe to the way what that they think. I'm wired differently, be it a blessing or curse. I listen to symphonic chanting from a political red and blue with a white stripe that represents you. Let me be clear. When you are sleeping, there is no one whispering in your ear trying to program you. It's always done when you're wide awake. No one takes your freedom away in one foul swoop. It's typically done a nickel or dime at a time, small enough that you never notice. Know this. One day you will be on the side of the fence with the rest of the marginalized of this country, wondering when, why, and how this all happened to you, looking for clues in history books that were written by the victors who always tell their stories one sided. You will be blinded and confused trying to see beyond the labels used to define you, just to trying to find who and where you came from in a system that is self sustaining. I'm not complaining. I merely come to you with a truth that's hard to accept. So label me African American insane vent. Refuse to digest what I say. Hell, maybe one day the war for the marginalized will be fought by your great 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 grandchildren. What will you care when you will never have the chance to know them? Just throw them to the same wolves that have been eating my kind since the beginning of that time. That the first stone, label, was cast. Label Me, a poem by Michael Storm Miller from a anthology, a two-volume anthology published by Moonstone Press called The Disasters of War. So, welcome. My name is Charles Carr. Welcome to Philly Loves Poetry, a collaboration between the Moonstone Arts Center of Philadelphia and PhillyCam. The purpose and the focus of our program is to give our viewers and our listeners the experience of the rich, rich culture of poetry in the city of Philadelphia and the surrounding area. So tonight we have dedicated, as we have in the past, our Moonstone PhillyCam broadcast to honor our veterans. And tonight we have a special veteran, Michael Miller. Mike is a spoken word artist poet who has served 8 years in the Marine Corps and 7 years in the Army National Guard. Mike served in Afghanistan amongst other military installations. Mike's new mission in life is to bridge the gap of understanding in civilians about the military experience and the aftermath of serving. So, welcome, Mike. It's really great to have you. I just wanted to preface this that I had Mike as a guest, several years ago on probably my first maiden show on dedicated to vets, and he was one of the guests that night, and he was so impressive. On the feedback I received of his performance that night was really quite extraordinary. And before I go any further, I just want to give some people some perspective on things when we talk about vets. There are 18 million vets alive today in the United States, and the majority of them are vets from the Gulf Wars. And I have to ask, are we providing the support for our vets when they leave active service? It is troubling to learn that more vets have committed suicide in the last decade than that died in the whole war in Vietnam. 1 in 3 of the nation's 19 million veterans report having been arrested and jailed at least once, and more than 181,000 are behind bars. Former service members make up 8% of those in state prisons and 5% of the federal prison population. So I'm deeply troubled by such statistics, but in what is happening with vets, I'm not surprised. So, uh, Mike, it's great to have you, but these are very troubling statistics that are not going away. We hear it all the time, uh, and I guess what I really want to know is, and you mentioned it, how can we begin through what we do, really through poetry, the spoken word and the written word, begin to bridge that gap so people really understand or get a glimmer of what it's like for our veterans when they come back to this country. What is the experience like from your perspective? And I mean, your poetry, has addressed that, but how can we begin to kind of bridge that guide from what we do?
Well, I think the biggest thing that could possibly happen to truly help things along is when there are organizations that are in place, for veterans. I think that, veterans should kind of like head it up, because you kind of know it's not just that you see things, but you know things because you've been there, yourself. I think when people listen, they should like actively listen and not listen to respond. And I think maybe the best way, instead of people doing or giving what they think is needed, to actually ask, what is needed. Most vets will say like, okay, we don't get the help we need, or we feel cast aside or tossed to the side. But when you look at how, TV portrays us, I mean, either you're, taking out a whole platoon with a napkin and a toothpick, or, you're uh beating up a spouse and doing something wrong. You got what I'm saying? It's never an accurate portrayal of what life is. And I think that's why so many of us get upset when people say, thank you for your service, because it's so mechanical. It's almost like, I love you. It's almost like, hello. You got what I'm saying? It's a
Right.
conditioned response, and it's no true feeling behind it, because the thought process always becomes, if you were, if America was truly thankful for my service, would things be the way it is? You know?
Exactly. Exactly. Um, can you tell me about, some of those failings from your perspective
Oh,
in what is happening to vets that you know? And I'm really talking about, uh, you know, the number of our vets, not only those that are uh, you know, have come back from the wars in the Gulf Wars, but
hmm,
those who still are older that are Vietnam vets
hmm,
who are still suffering, not only from the horrors of war, but
hmm,
also the realization that now history has called that war an unsuccessful war, almost as your service. It's not thank you for your service,
hmm.
but what did your service mean?
Yeah,
Which is it's very very hollow. To
yeah,
to 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 lay. I mean, what are we doing? what are we doing to bridge that information gap? But the
Well,
biggest thing is what is happening to vets when they come back here? What is the reality? I mean, just for yourself, when you mean you've had a very concentrated time of service, and here you come back to your community. What is it like?
well, I can tell you, um, when I first got out, and I'm not even I'm going to do the short version of this story. When I first got out, I think that, well, I don't think I felt, a lot of pride in myself. I knew I had problems. I knew I had anger management issues. And it's weird because you're used to things being a certain way. Well, civilian life and military life are two totally, they're like polar opposite. People do things on time, people do what they're supposed to do in the military, and it doesn't necessarily work that way here. So when I got out, I sought help for, anger management and everything, because I did a couple of things and I got stopped by the police and everything else. So I actually was able to get that help. But the problem came, like, I had gotten blown up while I was in Afghanistan. And I started to realize that, like, I couldn't work a regular job. Like, I have a horrible memory. I had traumatic brain injury. I have a horrible memory. Um, I just had too many issues, and so I went to try to get compensation for those issues. Because I still have to live, and it's not that, I'm not missing an arm or leg. My face isn't scarred up, so people looking at me, they think like, hey, he's okay. So I went on this journey, and what happened was I found that, number one, the VA in the military itself, they're not connected. They don't even communicate. The VA won't sign nothing from the military. The military won't sign nothing from the VA. That's really why I got out after 15 years of service, because I kept getting in trouble in my unit, because the hospital was giving me papers saying that they had to be filled out. I couldn't PT the way I used to because, as I said, my shoulder is partially separated, and I have a lot of different medical issues now. And they kept ping ponging me. So I got out. I decided to go try to get compensation. But when I went to go try to get compensation, I had to prove that you literally have to prove like you got blown up. You got to prove all of these things happen to you. So if you go in and you don't keep your paperwork from every fob, I don't care what situation you could have been shot 12 times. If you received any type of anything, you got to keep it, because if you don't keep it, you really don't have proof. And so now you're sitting in a place feeling as if your people are looking at you like you're fraudulent, because they're trying to disprove that you're going through what you're going through. The process is very, very, very hard. And with that being said, you could go afterwards and get SSDI, but then you're held to the same rigorous tests and the things that the military say that you're, messed up for. The civilian side of things, they don't agree. They don't take the military paperwork, because I'm 100% total and permanent, but they don't take the military paperwork and just pass it along. But you want my vote, but you say, "Oh, we're pro-military." It's really, that's just like the tip of things. And you can imagine having children, knowing that you still have to support them. Because I did what I did, it put me in the position it put me in, getting blown up, because I signed a dotted line and I agreed that I would follow all of the rules and regulations, and I did my job, and I did my job well. I went on every mission. Even after I got blown up 2 weeks later, I was right back outside the wire.
Wow,
So
wow.
it's like, how can you sacrifice so much and then be treated kind of like, a criminal in a sense, kind of like you're trying to get over on the system. It's ridiculous.
All right. One of the fascinating things about your story, Mike, is that, yeah, you came back with all this. but you really dove into your community down there in Chester,
Hmm.
and you wanted to add value. You wanted to do something for your community, and you really created things
Hmm.
that you were. What I can remember in our discussions in terms of community development,
Hmm.
you started your open mic series.
Yeah.
I mean, here you go. Here you go. Yeah, you're carrying this all within you, but
Hmm.
you're still committed to your community. You're still
Hmm.
committed. I want to do something. Yes, I'm carrying this burden, but I want to do something. Can you talk about that? I mean, that is just, I mean, that's very, very encouraging. The fact, and very
Yeah.
brave.
Thank
We
you.
talk about bravery, but that is really bravery.
Well, I think that when so I think we're all different in life, of course, but I think everyone can be kind of categorized. And for me, I've always been a person of service. That's what I've always been. Even way back, I used to work in a nursing home for a little while, and I enjoy helping people. I enjoy making things better. I enjoy finding like solutions. And when I set out to do my cafe, um, I ran into a lot of roadblocks. I went down to, my local government, like City Hall, trying to figure out, like, well, okay, is there any funding and how can I this and how can I that? And even if I just had to catch my breath for a second. Even in doing that, I feel like I walked in one door and they sent me to the next person and the next person and the next person. And before I knew it, I was out the back door and nothing occurred. So I had to kind of like take all of my bill money, like everything that I used to take care of my household, to take care of my daughter. And at the time, I was a single parent. I was taking everything and putting it into this cafe. And of course, I had help at the time because I couldn't have did it like all by myself. It was only one person who kind of helped me get the paperwork and everything else together because I found after being blown up, I really don't have patience for like paperwork and I forget a lot and sometimes things seem like insurmountable and sometimes you need an anchor and that's just kind of like the way it works. But I was able to open it. I kept the cafe open for about 4 years. And in doing that, what I did was anytime somebody came with me with an idea and they wanted to do something, I helped facilitate it. I helped make it happen. So even if they didn't have the money to rent the space, I say, tell you what, I'll go in halves with you. We'll do this. This is how we'll push it. I helped them out with advertising and everything else, and just really trying to build something strong. And to this day, everybody comes to me and says how, oh man, I remember you did this, or I remember you did that. And a lot of people ask me why did the cafe go away? And the weird part about everything is the cafe went away because this community is slowly being like gentrified and the weird part, I never experienced gentrification before, and the weird part about it is that, man, if you are not on board with what the people with the money want to do, then they quickly find ways to like crush you. And I don't think that they could crush me, but because I suffer from anxiety, I suffer from PTSD, I suffer from, depression. Sometimes, like, the weight really gets heavy, and I had good people in my corner and everything, but I got to a point where it was just too hard to mentally keep fighting to keep something pure, if you will, to
Mhm.
keep something that I held so close to my heart, still beating, still alive. So after I closed the cafe down, I just started renting different venues and having shows, here and there, and over time, I slowly kind of backed away from it like altogether. So currently, I'm not having shows. I'm not really, I do more performing than like
Mhm.
anything because that I can control.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I really want to turn to, and how you made. I want to really want to talk about your writing
Mhm,
poetry and your performing poetry. Was that something that you were doing before you entered the service, and
mhm,
how did it blossom while you were in the service, and then of course when you came home? Because I mean, I've seen your work, I've heard your work. I
mhm,
mean, it's very powerful, and I mean your control of language is amazing. Uh, but and it's not like hey, you just turned on a light.
mhm,
It really says to me that there were sparks, and you were doing this, you know,
mhm.
even probably before you entered the military. Can you talk about the history of your writing and your?
Well, when my mother has 9 children. Out of my
Mhm,
mother's 9 children, I was the black sheep. I was the nerd. I was the one reading all the time and everything. And the first thing I ever wrote, I was in like first grade, and it was really. I wish I still had it to this day. I can't even remember what it said, but I wrote in first grade. I could remember that, something really simple and barely legible, but I wrote. And the crazy part is, over the years, I was just writing like poetry. Um, every time I got inspired, if I was in love, as a young man, or if anything happened, and typically I wrote a lot about like being like in love, and I guess because my mom had so many children, I think that it's hard to, especially she had 8 boys and 1 girl, and in my
mhm,
family everything was really like machismo, and we all fighting each other and fighting
mhm,
everybody else, and I never really think, and even my real father, he was gone by the time I was like 6, and I think that I never really experienced love, so I had often fantasized about what love would be. And I don't mean like
uh-huh,
love making, I mean just literally someone loving you and you loving them. And I knew what I wanted it to be, and those were the things that I wrote about. So as I got older and I got into the military, you know, I started traveling and seeing different things, and becoming really involved with different cultures and different music, and understanding that no matter where I went, everything was really the same. It was just different people who grow up in different cultures, and they just express it in different ways. You got what I'm saying? But it's
mhm,
really like all the same. So I started writing about, you know, those things. And I never really shared my writing, but I had met a young lady. It was a really good friend for a long time. And she invited me out to a spoken word reading. And I was like, okay, cool. And because I heard her doing spoken word, and I said, I want to learn how to do it just like that. And
mhm,
we had worked together. And she said, well, write something and let me hear it. And I was like, well, okay. And I didn't know what to write. So I just started thinking about where I was at and what our neighborhood was like. And then I started writing, and
mhm,
I called her back and shared it with her. And she was like, she liked it. So she got me to come out. She signed me up for the open mic, and I felt like I couldn't back out, because I really looked up to her, and I got up and I did it, and everybody, like, I got like a little standing ovation, and I was like, wow, I was so nervous. The paper in my hand was shaking, or at
uh-huh,
least that's how I perceived it, you
right.
know. And she was like, oh, you did great, you did great. And after that, I just kept kind of going with it. And then I realized how important it was, number one, to be honest with whatever I wrote, because I've heard people do many different types of poetry and spoken word, and people do it all for different reasons. And
Mhm,
sometimes it's disingenuous. And I think that you can hear it when it's like not really genuine, So what I try to do is honestly come from the most truthful place that I could possibly come from when I
mhm,
write anything, when I share anything. because the last thing that I want anybody to ever do is think, number one, I'm trying to accuse anybody of anything, that I'm trying to like dump on any culture, any society. It's not that. It's just the world through my eyes. And people oftentimes say, well, everyone has their own personal truth. But
Right.
realize that personal truth, it never trumps reality. Reality is the only reality. Your personal truth is your opinion on
Hmm.
what's going on around you, but reality is reality. And if we all looked at reality and got out of the bag of our personal truth, I do think a lot of things would be better.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of things would be better, you know?
How do you go about nurturing this talent that you have? I mean,
Mm,
what is your practice?
mm,
And do you write every day, or do you
mm.
put time aside at a certain time and say this is, or you say, this has really hit me. I have to write about it.
I try to have as many like experiences that I can have. I try to meet as many people. I try to stay educated in different things. I think about the universe. I think about my existence. I think about, our existence. I try to think of solutions to problems, and those are like some of the things that really like inspire me. And I find
Mhm.
that when I'm not in an environment where I feel that I can learn anything or like I can grow in it, I find that's when I kind of shut down and don't do much of anything.
Uh-huh.
So I have to constantly be fed things. I need somebody to say something to me that just sinks in so deep. I'm like, wow, like one of my friends told me before, and I know it got to be an old saying, but I heard it from her, so I'm going to credit her with the saying. But she said salt and sugar look the same. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow,
Mhm.
wow. And it just hit me so deep. And I thought about so many different like ways I could write about that and just what that meant to me. What
Mhm.
it meant to me. Another one of my friends told me before, because when I did have the cafe, I knew a gentleman that was pretty much going along with a lot of stuff that I didn't necessarily agree with. And a lot of times I saw he was like, he took pictures of a spread I had and put it in a magazine as if it was at his spot. And I was so angry. I was so angry about it. But then somebody told me, like one of my really good friends said to me, he said, look, the moon steals its shine from the sun, and nobody ever confuses the two. And
Mhm.
I was like, get away from me.
Mhm.
Get away, because it was so deep. Like, I'm like, wow, you know something, it really does mean what's meant for you is meant for you, and nobody is ever going to dispute that. If you do something and you do it right
Mhm.
and you put all of yourself into it, nobody will never confuse you for somebody who's trying to steal your shine. They
Yeah.
can't steal your shine. That's all yours.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm,
the one thing, and I've that I'm very fascinated with, not only do you do your own writing
mhm,
and but you also do your own, video productions
mhm.
of your spoken word performance, which are really very, very well done. I mean,
Thank you.
you have the video talent, you
Yeah.
have that artistic, but of course your written word, your
Mhm.
spoken word is very strong. Yeah,
Thank you.
and I say that just as we're coming up to that point where I want to kind of turn the show over to you
Mhm.
so that you can share your talent with our audience, and I can just kind of sit back and we can sit back
Mhm.
and listen to you. But I have to say that I've seen your videos. They're so professionally, so
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you.
I mean, it's extraordinary this talent that you have, Mike, and we should value that, and we need to capitalize on that, and we
Mhm.
need to come to you more,
Thank you.
for that talent. So I'm going to give the floor to you,
Mhm.
and the screen's going to be yours, and it's yours to share your talent with us.
Okay, thank you. All right. This evening, uh some things I'm going to do from memory, and other things I will, have to read because I haven't taken out the time to learn some things, and I'm kind of ashamed of that. But the first piece I'm going to share with you is called Warrior Cry. And I wrote Warrior Cry for one of my friends who, a few years back now, he committed suicide on Christmas Day. It was a gentleman I served with in the Marine Corps. His name was Lance Cole. I actually asked his wife's permission before I even shared it for the first time, and I did it for her. And so that because I just felt like it was inspired by him, and I didn't want to feel like I was taking like anything from him or putting her through anything, because I know it was hard. I mean, she used to babysit my children, but when we were in the Marine Corps. But here it goes. Um so I normally have a singer sometimes, so I'm going to do my best with this, and it's not the song that normally goes with it. So it goes let it flow, let the cold winds blow from the east to the west. My Marine Corps is the best. My Marine Corps color is red, shows the world the blood we shed. My Marine Corps color is red, shows the world the blood we shed. So if a warrior cries in the middle of the night and no one is around to hear him, does he make a sound? Who knew that a moment of silence could be so loud? Who knew that the darkest of loneliness could be found in a crowd of people who say that they care, yet too emotionally ill equipped to handle with care the jagged edges of a warrior with no more missions, only crosses to bear? A warrior who cries out during nightmares, yet silent within a reality thrusted upon him without the proper tools to survive. You see, that feeling is intrusive, like bullets trespassing through unsuspecting skin. Like sins of the Father visited upon the Son, and those footsteps in the darkness are catching up, you see. Warriors were never taught to run. We're taught to be oxymorons, walking dead. Sanity becomes a needless necessity when coming home labeled a hero against one's will. If a warrior kills for his country, then who do we hold accountable for the blood that is spilled? Just who do we hold accountable for the countless souls we are commissioned to steal? Just who do we hold accountable for the countless tears cried in the dark that spark aggression, imploding, self loathing? The image leered upon with disdain through a toothpaste stained mirror. You see, we hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, except for warriors labeled veterans in the eyes of we the people. So now I ask you, if a warrior loads his gun in the middle of the night and nobody is around to hear, does he make a sound? When damaged to the point of no return, do we ignore the forest and let the fire burn under the logic that the fire will eventually burn itself out? We'll insert warrior and take the word fire out. You got to understand that there's a war going on. And the battlefield is a place that we call home. And it's beyond me how we have so many casualties and closets full of bone and flesh. Somewhere death almost feels like a warm bath in a phone call home, where no warrior is ever left behind. We're only left alone in that empty abyss of thank you for your service. Left sitting in a waiting room to be put on pills, trying to convert to living life from kill or be killed. So I ask you, if a warrior shoots his gun in the middle of the night and no one is around to hear, when his body hits the floor, will it finally make a sound that the whole world can hear? You see, 7,403 vets commit suicide each year. That's one hero every 65 minutes. If you close your eyes tight enough and you listen really hard this time, you just might hear it. Thank you. So that was the piece that I wrote for Lance. And the weird part about it all was that honestly, He called me and I was busy and I didn't take the call. I called him and he never answered back. And then the next thing I knew that happened. And I'm always left with the thought that, man, if I would have took his call. But I feel like you can never know. And I guess things in life happen the way it's supposed to happen. I don't know, but that is what it is. So the next piece that I'm going to share with y'all this evening, it's called Real Time War Reality Show. Uh, you would have to forgive me once again. There's going to be a little bit of singing, but I like to connect music to a lot of my poetry because I think that it helps kind of like push the point. So this one is oh say can you see by the dawn's early light which so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. They say that the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, I'm here today to tell you that the wicked gets it first. Bombs, bullets, and bad guys, newspapers, newscasters, political lies. Right now, war is the biggest reality show on TV. But you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, why believe me when you can see it for yourself? So many countries out there needing Americanized help, and our biggest and bravest are literally dying to give it. Just look at all the graveyards out there full of patriotic spirits. Matter of fact, you can just listen to the children calling out for fallen fathers and mothers, but only you and your living room will ever get the chance to hear it. And the world seems to be such a lonely place for a little boy who has the I miss my daddy blues. His mother's eyes swollen with tears every time he tries on his daddy's boots, but she can't understand that he just wants to feel close to him again. So every day he goes to school and tell teachers, preachers, family, and friends, when I grow up, I want to be just like him. So when he turns 18, off he goes, another contestant for this messed up reality show. I heard it said to honor thy father and mother, but it's really hard to do when a little girl is being raised by her father and brother thanks to an improvised explosive device. Mommy's never coming home. And you may think to yourself, it's not that bad. She's not really alone. She got her father and brother. But nothing can comfort a little girl's tears like the arms of her mother. So when she has questions, she turns to her dysfunctional girlfriends, menstruation, body changes, abusive boyfriends. A lifetime of change is coming around the bend because daddy can't teach her what he doesn't understand or know. Here's the next contestant for this fucked up reality show. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You know something? Children ask the hardest questions when they don't understand. But it's another moment for you to capture out there in TV land. We give a lot to this country, but my question is, does the tears of our children mean that we've paid too much? Newspapers, newscaster, political minds out of touch. I mean, hell, they even paid contractors about 100 grand more to be in a war zone than the members of the armed forces. And it's a disservice when a singer dies and get more airtime than one of us. But if it doesn't make dollars, then I guess it'll never make sense. Lights, camera, action, let the bullshit commence. I now return you to your regularly scheduled program. Thank you. Now, that one I always have a difficult time saying regularly. I don't know why that word is just hard for me to say, but it is. And I know y'all probably like, I didn't ask you about regularly. But I'm gonna keep moving forward. I'm going to do a two relationship pieces, and I'm doing relationship pieces because um they're important. Our relationships that we have while we're in the military, they're rough. You know, very few of them actually last. Um, it's hard being away, and I can tell you horror stories where people bank accounts were cleared out, and the only thing they were told is if Uncle Sam wanted you to have a wife, he would have issued you one. And that's something hard to tell somebody and have them like walk away and try to deal with it. So a lot of times in the military, I think the reason why we become so tight as units, because man, sometimes on the battlefield you wind up being a doctor. Sometimes you're the best friend. Sometimes you're the psychiatrist. Shit, sometimes you're the chef. It just depends on what's going on in the moment, you know. But we wind up being everything for each other, and a lot of times that's literally all we have. But I wrote this piece based off of a relationship I was in that shortly ended after I returned to after I returned from Afghanistan, and yeah, it was an 8 year relationship, but it just wind up not working out. I won't get into the specifics, but it's called "She Broke Me." So she broke me and then cast me aside. Along with those stories exclaiming she ride with me. She said she would die with me, but that's why I hate cliches. You see, there's nothing more to say when every word, every combination of words have been used to describe abuse in the first person. Conditions worsen when my feelings are put on the table. You see, she disabled me the moment she said she loved me, and I responded back. I lacked the knowledge to understand that she was hurt enough to hurt me. She broke me and then cast me aside with all of her lies, lies that secured me that she would never leave. She is the worst because she made me believe that I was her Adam and she was my Eve. Who would have ever thought deceit could taste so sweet? Even her truth was laced with lies. Tears she cried were used to cement me in place. Standing still, yet she left when it was convenient for her. I guess forever is a blur to those who think it's permanent. She doesn't understand that what she said was not what she meant. Forever was as long as what she needed from me. But once she got it, it was time for her to leave. Now, lonely is the only love that I know. What do you do when you lose your way, don't know where you at, where do you go? She broke me, and then she cast me aside. You see, all I ever needed was for her to love me unconditionally, in spite or despite of my flaws, as I do for her. Even though too great is the cost, I knew that all was lost the moment the door closed. Yet my rose will always be my rose. Thorns and all gripped tightly in palm, blood dripping lightly, and I'm still holding on, looking for the dawn in this restless, endless night. Wings of an angel, yet my horns stop me from taking flight. It was not supposed to be this way. Tears cascade from the words that are spoken. Tear ducts crack, dried from years of hoping that one day Eve would stop the pain in my chest by returning my missing rib. She possesses the rest of me. I have nothing left to give, but I still hold on as if my life depended on it. Perfect puzzle pieces forced to fit in a way that shows the beautiful portrait of what was never meant to be. Her pulse beckons me. Her scent indulges me. Her words deceive me in a way that mimics the cruel kindness that maybe I deserve. It calls me to the cliff. I jump and miss my opportunity to change my mind. I'm all in. I feel the wind beneath my wounded wings. You see, I would have given anything to fall into her arms, have her wrap me up within her wings, knowing she would probably only whisper that she has a soul too as she releases me falling into the dark abyss. She wasn't even compassionate enough to give me one final kiss. She just watched my descent into flame and darkness. She broke me and then cast me aside with cleverly placed lies that drip like gasoline soaked dreams, treading carelessly through lit matches. Perhaps this is a purgatory of my own making, sentenced to her endless memory. She is a thief. She stole from me something sacred that once taken can never be returned. My time. She was clever. She did nothing to earn. A part of me vaguely feels she only did it because she knew she could. She broke me and then cast me aside with deep woven lies that she subconsciously trained herself to believe were true. How can it be that my salvation and destruction was all constructed by one I trusted, even when I couldn't trust myself? I found myself in darkness so thick that even my screams of pain are suffocating within it. I can swear that in the darkness I can hear her voice softly, softly whispering to me, choke on it, choke on it. I'm confused. You see, it sounded so much like I love you. I gasp. I respond, I love you too. I gasp. She responds, choke on it. But the only thing I could ever hear is don't let go. I gasp. I say, I never will. She responds inaudibly. I gasp. Now finally, I understand. Then silence. And that was the poem that I wrote for that relationship and the demise of that relationship. Um, it wasn't like it was a horrible relationship. I guess it was just kind of like the feeling through everything that happened and led up to the breakup, the feeling that was derived from that. So the next one that I am going to share, like I said, it was a relationship piece. It will be we. And let me apologize that everything probably sounds so light, but this is a mixture of military poetry, pandemic poetry. So this one is called We. It's one that I often do. It's quick, and I think that a lot of people may see themselves in it. So when you and I first met, you said we. Now, isn't that what you told me? No more you or I, just us with no tears to cry. Now, just waves of deception. With every falsehood, we find a new lesson to learn, like walking through fire, you're sure to get burned. Reduced to ashes with no way to return back to we. Lost within caverns of deception. You see, there's no discretion when we open up our mouths and speak. Pride is so strong, and maybe that's what make our love so weak. But who's to blame for the present state of mistakes that led us up to this point? I mean, hell, Millie Vanilli had blamed it on the rain. So should we just do the same and blame it on what should be? I mean, should we act like we don't even involve you and me, but two other lovers in which time forgot? You see, the intricate plot that we have here, it's getting old. In the beginning, we were the envy of all love stories ever told, but now we're like that coldest hour before winter's dawn break, burdened with an inevitable tomorrow which only God could negate. But if we could rewind back the hands of time and take back all of those lies and go back to that day before we met, would we do it all again? Find a way to fuck this up and become lovers before we become friends. I promise you, the end result will always be this. So now I guess that leaves we as you and I. Thank you. Um, this next piece that I'm going to share with you, it's part of like what I call my pandemic collection. This is literally part of the pandemic collection, and I wrote it because I have five daughters. I have five daughters. No sons. I thought I must have did something somewhere. I don't know, but I always wanted a son. Uh, in the beginning of me having children, but then it got to a point in life where I realized like having a child, having a son would be the scariest thing that I've ever did. And when I tell you I've seen some crazy things in life, having a son terrifies me. And I'm saying this because during the pandemic, there was so many, police shootings, like police shooting like African American males, and it's a scary thing. And it's such a weird subject to talk about. And we live in a society where everybody is so wound up in perception and feelings, and feelings are weird because we don't understand. It seems like we don't understand that feelings constantly change day to day, moment to moment. They're not real. They're only real for a moment. The only thing that we can never be left with is the reality of what's going on. So I want to give out a little warning. This one has quite a bit of foul language in it, so forgive me in advance. This is called Run, My Son, Run. I was born in a place where dreams are stolen one day at a time. And it is easy to feel a soldier trapped behind enemy lines that define anywhere outside of your neighborhood. And it's not all good when mothers teach their sons not to run from their would be assailants or assassins. I mean, what's the difference when you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place? And the only reason you find yourself there is because of your race. Displaced in a reality that gives you not one pot to piss in, nor one window to throw it out of. Prayers to the omnipotent one above seem to fall on deaf ears. See, when you are born here, in church you learn to fear no evil. But if it's one thing history has taught my kind, it's to fear the power of white people, especially those dressed in blue. The ones who were sent here to kill, excuse me, to serve and protect you. Please, by all means, disagree. You see, I fought in wars so you can maintain the right to think and speak freely, even if those thoughts that are spoken are at the detriment of me and my family. I've often heard my friends say, if you do what they say, just comply. Strict obedience will make them go away. Okay. But in the case of Freddie Gray, you know what? That's a bad example. In the case of Sandra Bland, bad example. The case of Breonna Taylor, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice. You know what? Fuck it. If I had a son, I would tell him to fight. Fight as if your life depended on it because it does. I don't care what anyone else does. You spill that cop's blood and run, my son. Run like the chalk outline they intend to trace your body with, hands still in the air. Let the wind be at your back, spill his blood, and get the fuck out of there. You see, I don't condone violence, but if given the choice that one of you on this night departs Earth, leaving behind their family, baby boy, I choose you to come home to me. You take his life and you fucking run, my son. I see how you all are looking at me with judgmental eyes. But can one of you please tell me one routine traffic stop that your son deserves to die? Tell me about all those lullabies sung long ago in the dark for comfort and protection, now just a precursor for a young star that long ago went supernova, and only now do we get the chance to watch their light dim and fade slowly on black tops meant to simulate galaxies. All those questions and conversations about when they grew up and what they wanted to be were just sweet fairy tales to compensate us for our broken dreams. No, fuck that. Spill his blood and run, my son. Run like the tears of separated slave families, forced to never again sleep in peace, not knowing if those left behind found release from their pains and miseries, unwillingly hanging out on limbs of trees. Son, you take his life and make it back to me. Your life should not come to an end because of hasty decisions made by men too afraid of the color of your skin to take 2 seconds to realize that that bulge in your pocket is just a cell phone. Son, you end his life and you make it back home. Because when they come knocking on my front door, that is the moment I will gladly trade my life for yours. To them, we all look alike. Take off your clothes, give them to me. I will be their suspect. Black male, 5'7", blue jeans, black hoodie. Son, to them, we all look alike. You fucking run, son. Run up those stairs into your bed, and no matter what you hear, you sleep and dream of the day your son will never have to run. My son, you sleep as deep as the ocean and as hard as a rock the size of a mountain. My son, traffic stop. A lot of things happen during routine traffic stops. It's ridiculous. As a military vet, if we went into someone's community or something, like you can't just go shooting people. You can't. You would have to pay a price if you did that. You can't just go shooting people. It don't work that way. Yeah.
I can, in that regard, I can share experience that I had. When I worked, I mostly had female employees, most of whom were women of color,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic, African American. And after, one of these incidents, I just felt that I had to sit down with them and listen to them, what their own personal experiences was.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat, and I sat and I listened to them for like an hour and a half. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just floored with what I heard about their own personal experience with their children, with their sons primarily, and their husbands. What it's
Mm-hmm.
like there, things that we on this side really don't have any understanding or appreciation for what it's like. And, when I heard these women, and the fear that they had when their son left the house in the morning to go to school, to go to work, wherever, and where are they going to return?
Yeah.
And it you start to think it's just someplace else in this world, but it's right
Yeah.
there. It's right here. It was right there before me,
Yeah.
and in that reality, and it's it's real, and it hasn't changed very much.
Yeah.
You
And you
know,
know something? It's not real to people who don't know and don't experience. A lot of times people on the outside looking in, their explanations of stuff become so simple. Well, all you have to do is do what they say, you know? That's
well,
it. And you'll leave. You'll be
well, we've seen
alive.
that doesn't work. We see that
Yeah.
doesn't work. We've seen that
Not
it doesn't work in real time. It just so happens that cameras have caught this. I mean, in a very, kind of
yeah.
devastating. And I mean, watching some of this is just, it's just very, very, very cruel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
And it's not
but
everybody, but it's
no,
it's
I'm
it
right.
doesn't take everybody.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
So, Mike, thank you very much for
Not a
your
problem.
honesty. Thank you very much for sharing, your words with us tonight. And I want to continue, this dialogue with you, not just as one show.
Hmm.
Uh, I want to keep the line open to you, and through me and through
Hmm.
Moonstone.
Hmm.
So thank you very much. I know
Not a
Larry was
problem.
very, very, very happy that I had invited you to be on the show. And
Yeah.
before we leave, first I want to thank you. I want to thank Ileana Pinetto, who's been
Yeah.
our technical person that makes this all
Thank you,
happen.
Eliana.
Every other month that she's our technician, she
Hmm.
does all the work in advance to make this show really work out very. So I'm very
Yeah.
grateful to her. But I want to say one thing is about Moonstone and Moonstone Press and Larry, Robin, and I say this publicly, and I've said this many times, that Larry is really a cultural treasure of Philadelphia.
I
He
agree.
really, he really truly is, and he continues to keep on keeping on. I mean,
Yeah.
we have over 100 readings a year. We have close to 300 poets that we put up on the
Mhm.
stage or in the screen here. He continues to publishes books and anthologies.
Mhm.
So I only ask our audience, look, we're talking about he is expanding the love of poetry to people
Mhm.
in the city of Philadelphia, whether you know it or not. He does it more than anybody else in this area. He might do it more than anybody else in the country. Be
He's
truthful with
awesome.
you. And
Mhm.
so I ask you to go to moonstoneartcenters.org and just, donate, make contributions to us to keep
Mhm.
this thing going. Larry has done it pretty much by himself. I mean, he does have
Mhm.
people that help and people that sponsor reading, but he has been the driving force.
Mhm.
And I'm only asking this because I've been involved with Moonstone close to 16, 17 years, and I see all this, what has happened, and all the great things that have come out, like this show, and like the other things, like the anthologies, that we talked about, is the disasters of war and all the vets that are in these anthologies, that this gives a way for them to express it. So thank you, Larry, and thank you all
Thank you,
for
Larry.
looking in and watching. And I hope you enjoyed this program. I think it was very important to hear this and to hear what Michael had to say. So, okay, thank you again.
Thank you.